day of Abundance is Our Birthright. And today, with the second book coming out, actually being released later today, and the third book being uploaded because of a date reason. That is my son's birthday, 7/22, and Mary Magdalene's feast day. No Kings is going to be uploaded on 7/22. That is the last book in the Woke Nana Echo Chamber series. I have one more book coming out this year. It is a grief memoir and how to stay connected to your loved ones in spirit. Much different thing. We are right now living smack dab in the middle of the Bear Balt basket. I'm probably saying his name wrong, but he's the one who identified quite a while ago. Lots of different things coming up in our astrology, but one of the things that he identified was what we are currently living through astrologically is the 4 degrees. I've talked about that many times. If you haven't listened or read those things, go back and do that. I'm not going to do that today. It is the reason why we are doing 19 days of abundance here. 4 is the building block number. We are literally now making decisions for our future, not just the future of the United States of America, but the future of humanity. Right smack dab in the middle of this, we have this or right, actually it's right after we finish this, we have this primary that I'm wearing the Mike Foley t-shirt for. Also putting up some things about that. He is a Republican candidate running against Tom Emmer in District 6, which I don't live in, but he is who I marched for and joined that democratic process. And I am also starting to write for Anthony Hamilton, who is running against Pete Stauber in our district. So you need to know whether or not you're in District 6 or District 8. I am in 8, and I live on County Road 8. Okay. Today would have been my, I think, 36th wedding anniversary to my ex-husband, who turned 56 yesterday. He is the father of my 2 oldest children, Brandon and Leona. Happy birthday, Keith. And I am, he and I share Layla and Luca as our grandchildren and Beckett as our grandchild from those 2 children. So we share in common 2 of our children and all 3 of the current grandchildren in my family. And so we have definitely a direct connection, all of that coming up right now. We had another immigrant who was completely murdered yesterday, and ICE is not even hiding it. So you need to look into that. I'm sure his name is Juan. It's spelled Joan. We'll get into that a little bit more here. I'm not going to remember all the names because there's been a couple lately. And then yesterday also, the discovery was finally released because they had gone through every possible narrative they could at the Department of Justice to hold back the evidence in Renee Good and Alex Pretty's case. So on the same day that Juan was murdered, we actually got the discovery, and it's lots of stuff. It's like, I don't know, she said 6,000 documents or something like that. So they are going to be sifting through that. The coroners have already come through and said that those were murders. So adjudication is going to happen for these people. And we're going to talk a little bit why. And then I also want to talk about why on the 11th day, we've had 11 people murdered related to ICE, one of them being an actual agent, and then 10 of them being other folks that weren't agents. We've had 11 court cases that have been lost in court having to do with manipulation to our voting process that the mega administration has lost. And I'm just going to refer them. They are not Republican, so I will fight for the Republicans here who need a different voice. They are authoritarian and fascist, and we're going to go exactly into why on this day, when abundance is our birthright, our current president is anti-American. So I'd like you to share these things and then act accordingly. This is the time to walk as, don't wait for. Today is 0 day. What are you going to do with what you see? Or at the end of the No Kings book, we ask you, now you've seen it, what are you going to become? Who are you going to become? What humanity, what timeline do you want to choose for humanity? So, calling the President of the United States anti American is not a comment on where he was born, the flag he stands beside, the office he occupies, or the number of times he says the word America. It is not a judgment on what America is supposed to be. America is not a man. It is not a political party. It is not unquestioning obedience to whoever currently controls the federal government. America is a constitutional republic built upon the radical proposition that the government belongs to the people. That power is divided because concentrated power is dangerous and every citizen is protected by the law. That elections are administered according to the law rather than presidential preference, and that no president gets to decide which votes, judges, journalists, states, or Americans are legitimate. Measured against those principles, Donald Trump is an anti American president. Over the last 7 months, we have watched him use the presidency not as a temporary public trust, but as an instrument for gathering power into his own hands. He has treated constitutional limitations as obstacles to be defeated, independent institutions as enemies to be subdued, federal law enforcement as a vehicle for presidential retaliation, and the American people as populations to be sorted into those deserving of protection of the government and those deserving its force. Now he is bringing that project directly to the elections that could restrain him. The Constitution does not place the president in charge of administering federal elections. States and governments run them within the framework established by Congress and the Constitution. The president is a participant in the political system, not its national election supervisor. He does not have the authority to invent new voting qualifications, command the states to rebuild their election systems, collect voter information for his administration, or use unrelated federal money to force compliance with his preferred rules. Trump has been trying to do all of those things. In March, he issued an executive order directing the federal government to impose new citizenship verification requirements, assemble federal citizenship information, and interfere with the handling of mail ballots. On June 29th, a federal court ruled that central portions of that order were unconstitutional and unlawful, including his attempt to have the Department of Homeland Security compile a citizenship list and direct the Postal Service to restrict mail voting. 23 states in the District of Columbia had challenged the order, the White House. The ruling did not stop him. His Justice Department has pursued detailed voter information from states and has repeatedly gone to court trying to obtain it. Courts have rejected those efforts more than 10 times. The administration has sought information not only about registered voters, but in at least one case about election workers themselves. This is not routine federal assistance to state election administrators. It is an administration attempting to insert itself into the machinery of elections while the president's party is facing the possibility of losing control of Congress. The source there is AP News. Yes, this is sourced and documented. It's just fact. Last week, the Justice Department sent letters to election officials in 50 states and the District of Columbus, warning that administrators could face criminal prosecution if they knowingly allowed ineligible voters to remain on the registration list or vote. The officials were given 5 days to explain how they intend to comply. The administration has offered no evidence of a national epidemic of non-citizen voting because there is no such epidemic. Even the Associated Press describes the administration's underlying assertions about widespread fraud as untrue. AP News. The threat is the point. Election administrators are being told that the federal government is watching them, demanding their records and contemplating criminal charges. States are being pressured to prove their loyalty to the administration's election narrative before a single midterm ballot has been counted. The administration has also attached election demands to federal anti-terrorism grants. Under the requirements reported by the Associated Press, 20% of certain grants could be withheld until states comply with measures involving voter citizenship, verification, election workers' citizenship, and voting equipment. These are grants intended to help state, local, and tribal governments protect the public from terrorism. Trump's administration is using that money as leverage to force election changes that some states cannot legally or practically make without action by their legislators. AP News. That is not election integrity, that is coercion. Trump has also removed the leadership of the Federal Election Assistance Commission, the independent body created to dispute after the disputed 2000. Remember the hanging chads? When Al Gore really run that election? Yeah, lots of documentaries about that. Not the first time we've had some shenanigans around voting with this party. Yeah, back to that. Sorry, lost my space. Oh, that's because I got to go down. Trump has also removed the leadership of the Federal Election Assistance Commission, the independent body created after the disputed 2000 election to help states improve election administration and voting systems. At the same time, he is preparing a nationally televised speech in which he is expected to resurrect claims about voting machine vulnerabilities and foreign interference connected to the 2020 election. 6 years after losing that election, after recounts, audits, litigation, and a violent attempt to interrupt its certification, he is once again using the presidency to make Americans distrust the electoral system before an election could weaken his power. From the democracy docket. We know how this works because we have already lived through it. First, he declares that an election system is corrupt. Then he demands extraordinary authority to correct the corruption he alleges. If his party wins, the election proves that the system worked If his party loses, the loss becomes evidence that the system was stolen. Under that arrangement, there is only one result he will recognize as legitimate, the result that preserves his power. That is anti American. A president faithful to country protects the rights of Americans to choose their government, including the right to reject him. A president who uses federal prosecutions, federal funding, federal database, and federal agencies to place himself above state election administrators is not safeguarding democracy. He is trying to make the administration an interested party, the enforcement authority, and the final judge of the contest at the same time. The election result is not separate from the rest of what has happened over the last 7 months. It is the culmination of it. In Minnesota, Trump's Operation Metro Surge placed hundreds of armed administration agents into communities during mass deportation sweeps. 2 American citizens, Renee Good and Alex Pretty, were killed by federal agents in January. A third man, Julio Sosa Celis, was wounded. Federal officials then withheld body camera footage, digital evidence, and other material from local prosecutors for approximately 6 months, incorrectly claiming that the agents possessed blanket immunity from state prosecution. The evidence was finally surrendered only after jurisdictional disputes and litigation. From Reuters. A government cannot call itself a defender of law and order while insisting that its own armed agents exist beyond local investigation. Trump has attempted to rewrite the 14th Amendment's guarantee of birthright citizenship through an executive order, treating constitutional citizenship as though it were a benefit that could be withdrawn by presidential command. On June 30th, the Supreme Court held that children born in the United States to parents unlawfully or temporarily present are citizens under the 14th Amendment. The Constitution said it. The president attempted to say otherwise. From the Supreme Court. He imposed sweeping tariffs under emergency authority that did not authorize him to impose tariffs. In February, the Supreme Court ruled that the International Emergency Economic Powers Act did not give the president the power he claimed. That actually happened on the February 20th conjunction, by the way. That was the Aries, Saturn, Neptune, exact at the 0 degree. It's also the same storm that kicked up Manhattan, shutting down that Monday I was there. Manhattan, the 6th largest storm in their history, shut down Wall Street. The Supreme Court ruled that the International Emergency Economic Powers Act did not give the president the power he claimed. The court emphasized that the Constitution gave Congress, not the president, the taxing power, including the power to impose tariffs. Again, from the Supreme Court. The recurring question is not whether every one of Trump's policies is unpopular or whether a president has broad lawful authority in immigration, foreign affairs, or national security. Presidents do have substantial authority. The question is whether any boundary remains meaningful to him when it stands between Donald Trump and what Donald Trump wants. Congress controls spending. and it has attempted to control, and he has attempted to control or withdraw congressionally authorized money. States administer elections, and he has attempted to dictate their procedures. The 14th Amendment defines citizenship, and he has tried to redefine it. The courts interpret the law, and his administration has repeatedly treated adverse rulings as interference rather than constitutional checks. Local authorities investigate potential crimes within their own jurisdictions, and his administration withheld evidence involving federal agents. The press investigates the government, and his Justice Department has now subpoenaed 5 New York Times reporters over reporting that embarrassed the administration. Some of those subpoenas were delivered to journalists' homes. They followed hours-long White House meeting involving the FBI director and the Justice Department officials. Press freedom advocates described the move as an extraordinary escalation in the administration's effort to intimidate independent journalism. It came after federal agents had already searched the home of another journalist and seized her electronic devices. AP News. The First Amendment was not written to protest praise of the president. It exists to protest the speech he would prefer to silence. The First Amendment was not written to protect praise of the president. It exists to protect the speech he would prefer to silence. That is why this cannot be reduced to a debate over tone, policy, disagreements, or partisanship. The defining conflict in this country is no longer simply between Republican and Democrats. It is between democratic self-governance and presidential power that recognizes no legitimate authority outside itself. American patriotism does not require loyalty to a president. It requires loyalty to the constitutional order that prevents any president from becoming the nation. Trump demands the opposite. He treats criticism of him as hostility toward America, investigation of him as corruption, legal restraints upon him as sabotage, election losses as fraud, and institutional independence as insubordination. He merges himself with the country so completely that whatever serves him becomes American, and whatever resists him becomes an enemy. But the president is not America. The election workers being threatened with prosecution are Americans. The citizens whose voter information his administration is demanding are Americans. The states resisting unlawful federal control are part of America. The journalists being subpoenaed are exercising an American freedom. The judges ruling against him are performing an American constitutional duty. The people killed, searched, detained, frightened, or silenced by the power of his government do not become less American because Donald Trump has declared them undesirable. The clearest test of a president's allegiance to democracy is whether he will allow the people to limit his power. Donald Trump is showing us his answer right now. He is attempting to shape the rules of the midterm election, intimidate the officials who administer it, obtain the data surrounding it, condition federal money on compliance with his demands, discredit the equipment that will record its votes, and prepare his followers to distrust any result that does not preserve his control of Congress. There is nothing more fundamentally anti-American than a president using the power entrusted by him, by the voters, to prevent the voters from taking that power away. America is not whatever Donald Trump can force the government to do. America is the right of the people to stop him. Fight fascism. Make America great. Finally, get rid of all mega politicians because they are fascist. Abundance is our birthright. No one gets to dictate our freedom or tell us who is a person and who is not. We are not living in the days of slavery, and we need to recognize that we need to do better in order for abundance to be built for all. Let's build it.